For some context, I'm 15 years old and trans. I've been through several Discord servers focused on trans people. I had got a friend request from someone random and saw that they were in a trans server I was in. After accepting it, they had asked me to become mommy's slave for about $500 a week. I asked their age and they said that they were 18. I said that I was 15 and they said that 18 was a typo and that they meant to put 17. I honestly doubt though that either number is correct. I asked what they meant by their previous request and then got a response. You know, nudes, dress up, stuff like that. They didn't really seem too bothered to be asking a 15-year-old about this. I had asked for a selfie and then got one. Little did I know that I would actually become friends with the actual person in the selfie. She's trans too. This creepy predator had photoshopped my friend's selfie, only changing the hair. The face in the scene was the exact same as one of my friend's old selfies. I only figured that all out today. This story is actually from months ago. The predator then asked me for a selfie, at which point I set my status to invisible and reported them to Discord TNS. I believe they deleted the account and I'm really hoping that they reported the predator to the police, but I'm not really sure. So to the really creepy selfie stealer from Discord, let's definitely not meet. I have forgotten about this story until very recently. This happened during my sophomore year of high school. For some context, I'm a freshman in college now. This was around the time that Kik was still kinda popular. I would typically talk to old friends on there or my mom when neither of us had our phone in service. One day though, a guy I didn't know had sent me a message request. The message said,
"Is this Nicole?"
I kind of had a tendency to give people my tics so that they didn't have my number. So I figured it was someone who I gave my tic to a while ago and that they're just now texting me. I traveled around a lot for sports and met a lot of people, so this reasoning was entirely possible to me. I replied back with yes, and we then started to engage in small talk. I asked him if his name is Gerald and if I had met him when I was on a tournament or something, which he said yes, and I actually believed him, because why would he lie about that? He then started asking me really personal questions like if I had a boyfriend and if I was a virgin right off the bat. I was honest, as I'm not really one to lie about those things. I didn't have a boyfriend and I wasn't a virgin, so that's what I told him. I honestly should have saw these as red flags, but I really wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. He asked me to be his girlfriend and he said that he would take care of me and actually treat me like a real woman. I pretty much immediately declined, as I didn't even know who this guy was, let alone was attracted to him. I told him we could be friends though, which was a horrible mistake. As time went on, his texting became super obsessive. He pretty much convinced himself that I was his girlfriend, even though I never once said yes to the many times he would ask me. He just became really creepy. He would threaten to come hurt me if I didn't answer the phone. He would Photoshop my face onto naked pictures and threaten to leak them to my school accounts and to my coaches. He told me that he was watching me everywhere I was going and that he knew I was lying. I was really scared because I had no idea who this guy was or where he lived. His location was changed every time I asked, and his social media pages were pretty much just created just for the purposes of stalking me. I had to delete pretty much all of my social media. He even got a hold of my phone number and was frequently calling and texting me. One instance that I clearly remember is he made a fake phone number on one of those apps and was trying to talk to me as another person so that he could get information on me. He actually even contacted one of my best friends saying that he was looking for me at my house and that he's trying to get a hold of me. I was genuinely pretty scared, but I didn't know what to do. I had never opened up to anyone about this. That is, until one day I told my brother after about a year of this happening. By this point, I had just gotten used to the threatening text and just kinda considered it a way of life now. When talking to my brother, I told him everything that had happened and giving him all the details from the past year. He asked me what the guy's name was, and I said Gerald. He asked if I knew a last name, and I gave it to him, hoping it was a real name. He asked if I knew what he looked like, and I did. I sent him the one picture I had from the beginning of us talking. Well, my brother was absolutely livid. As it turns out, the guy was a friend of my brother's now ex-girlfriend. She apparently didn't like me due to the relationship that I had with my brother, so she sent one of her friends to basically harass me. For a little context, my brother lives in Georgia while I at the time lived in Oregon. My brother took care of the problem and I finally got the money to get a new phone and new number. My brother also broke up with that girl for pulling such a horrible stunt on his family like that. Now, fast forward to Christmas break and I went to Georgia. I was with my brother and we decided to stop at a Burger King. It's been a couple of months since I interacted with Gerald, and honestly, I'm not even that concerned, even though I was in the same state as him. I got to the cash register and my jaw completely dropped. Gerald was my cashier. I knew that he worked at Burger King, but of all the ones we chose to go to, why his? He gave me a really creepy smirk as if he was plotting all of the ways that he could hurt me right on the spot. I was totally frozen. My brother, who had come out of the bathroom, immediately realized who it was. My brother grabbed me and pulled me out of that Burger King in a really swift move. We never ended up eating there. In fact, we just went home. I don't really know what would have happened or what would have been said if my brother didn't come out when he did. It still really sickens me whenever I think about that horrible year of dealing with them. So, Gerald, although I know it will never happen, I still really pray and hope that I never encounter you again. This happened last year when I was 15 years old. Me and my friend, who I'll call Kate, were messing around in our neighborhood one day. We were on the side of the road just playing around with sparkles and other things like that. Then Kate said to turn around and look behind me. I did so, and when I looked at the home behind us, that's when I saw that someone was looking at us through the window. I couldn't really tell what he looked like, so I just ignored it and decided to turn around. A few minutes went by and Kate again said to look again. I did so, but this time there was a woman with him at the window. They were just staring at us and I began to feel really uneasy. But again, I just turned around and decided to ignore them. As the sun started to go down, I walked back to my house, which was right across the street, and Kate went to hers, which was a few blocks away. A couple of hours later, right around 10, my phone lit up. I was watching Orange is the New Black, so I just decided to ignore it at first. Then I got another alert, so I picked up my phone and decided to look at the screen. My two alerts were from Snapchat. Someone added me. Their username was something like Jaden with a few numbers after it, and then they sent me a picture. I waited until the episode was over before I opened it. Weird. It was just a black screen with a message that said, "Hey." I decided to ignore it. Around 6 to 7 minutes later, I had got another Snapchat from the same guy, except this time it was a black screen that said,
"Why didn't you answer?"
Again, I ignored the snap and went back to Netflix. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't look at it. Throughout the episode, I had got around 4 more alerts, which I all ignored. Then I fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I had about 11 alerts. Most of them were black screens asking why I wasn't answering or telling me that they know I'm awake. But the last one though, now that one really freaked me out. It was a picture of my house taken from across the street with a caption that said,
"Answer me now."
I was really stupid and I didn't end up screenshotting the pictures, but I did block him. I didn't hear anything else for a few more days, but then I got another alert that someone had added me. It was the same exact usernames as before, but with a 1 after it. And then not too long afterwards, I had then got sent multiple snaps. I didn't open any of them because I was in class at the time. 4 hours later, I checked my Snapchat. I kid you not, every single one of the pictures he sent me were pictures of me. Some were during lunch and some were even when I was walking home from school. Again, I just blocked the user and I didn't get any screenshots. Late last night, I'd got a snap of my window, again taken from across the street from the same user, except this time there was a 2 at the end of the username. I told my dad and he totally freaked out and then called the police. When they arrived, I told them everything, but they couldn't really do anything since I didn't get any screenshots. I don't really know what to do at this point. I deleted my Snapchat, but he's found me on other social medias as well. I've blocked him on everything, but he just keeps making more accounts. I'm honestly thinking about deleting all of my other accounts as well. At this point, I honestly feel like it's my only option. I don't know. I'll definitely be sure to update if anything else happens. When I was in high school, this guy fell in love with me and I guess his friend gave him my Snapchat. I knew who he was, though I had only spoken to him like twice, so I added him back, not really thinking too much into it. At the time, SnapMap was pretty new and I didn't even know that there was a ghost mode or whatever it's called so that no one could see your location. We had started talking and pretty quickly we became friends. I had no idea that he had feelings for me, that is, until he asked me out on a date. I nicely declined, making excuses why I couldn't go, and that's when he started being really creepy. He Googled my street and he literally counted how many houses that there was before mine so that he could find mine. Then he sent me a pic of my house and then he said,
"Isn't this your house?"
I said that it wasn't because I was so freaking creeped out, but he continued on saying that he knew that it was. At that time, the idea of him using SnapMap didn't even really cross my mind since I was panicking so much. A few days later, I had to go to the drugstore with my mom to get her medicine. I had stopped talking to him, but right before I left, he had texted me something. I had left him on read since my mom had told me to hurry, and I started walking towards the drugstore. Now, the drugstore is about 20 minutes away from my house. There was a guy that I used to really like that was working at the drugstore, so on our way back home, me and my mom were both gushing about how he was looking and smiling at me. I was 15 years old, don't judge me. When I finally came back home, I had internet, so obviously my messages came up. One of them was from him. I opened it up and then he asked,
"Where were you 20 minutes ago?"
I answered, nowhere. He then replied back with,
"Don't lie to me. You were at the pharmacy, weren't you? The worker is pretty cute, isn't he? You have a crush on him?"
I was so scared, and that's when I finally realized that it was all because of SnapMap, so I instantly deactivated it. And that was pretty much the start of him abusing and stalking me for the next year or so. Regardless, now that I think about it and understand SnapMap a little bit more, if you don't have data, your position doesn't update. So how did he even know where I was, and how did he know I had a crush on that worker? I don't know. It still really creeps me out to this day, but I just like to believe that it was some weird coincidence. I was 11 years old at the time, the good old MSN days. So, you remember when everyone used to get out into a chat together, and literally like 50 random strangers would add you per chat? Well, it was all fun and games until one turned out to be an absolute creepy weirdo. So, silly me had a picture of me and my friend in my uniform, and this guy asked me how old I was, which I told him. Then he tells me that he was 20 and that he recognized me from town. That he also knew what school I went to and then revealed the school. I started to actually believe that maybe he really did know me, but he then went further to ask me to meet up with him the next day after school. I refused. I was a bit of a sassy teen who gave loads of attitude about him being a stranger, and I pretty much told him to screw off. He then went on to tell me that if I didn't go and meet him, he'd come by my school and collect me himself. I pretty much cried for hours over this and eventually told my mom. My mom was and still is a pretty heavy drug addict, and she pretty much just shrugged her shoulders and just told me to grow up. Great. Well, he never did show up, but it really freaked me out for months. Hopefully I don't hear from him again in the future. I really hope not anyways. You're about to hear a story about a creeper that I met about 2 years ago. Everything had started at the summer of 2018 when I then got a friend request from a user which I'd rather keep in secret. At first we were just chatting about casual things and he even called a few times. I was feeling a little awkward because he just kept asking me really strange questions, such as my telephone model, my parents' occupations, and quite weird questions about my house. I still kept talking to him though because I guess I was interested what will happen next. And I mean, he wasn't really creeping me out that much at the time. Rather, I thought he just might be a scammer or something. One day he had called me and he started complaining about his problems that he was having with his girlfriend. And he even said that he was going to start crying in front of me. I didn't really know how to comfort him though. Another time that we talked, I was getting kind of uncomfortable and I started laughing. The reason why I was laughing was because that's my coping mechanism when I don't really know what to do. That's when he told me that he doesn't call me for laughing, and that he really hopes when we sleep together I won't be laughing. Yeah, total red flags at this point. About a year had passed by and nothing too strange had happened, and then he appeared yet again. He started confessing his love for me and saying really weird things like he liked the way I breathe, my shirt, and other really weird things. Some time had passed and he started a conversation asking me whether I was still a virgin or not. When I then went on to tell him that I feel kind of uncomfortable answering that, he then proceeded to tell me that he really needs to know the answer because he needs to know if his future wife is pure or not. Then he started pushing me to accept his proposal to marry him, and he got extremely mad when I said that it wasn't appropriate to send that over a message. He called me a child for that and told that he needed an answer right away, and that he'll never love any other girl ever again. It'll always be me till the very end. I got really freaked out over this and I decided to block him. I haven't heard back from him since, but I really hope it stays that way. I'm a 26-year-old woman who's lived in Alaska my whole life. This will become important later when you see just how far this person would go to try and be with me. This all happened a few years back when I was in college. Like any woman that age, I had made a grave mistake of attempting online dating, which led to disastrous consequences. I was using OkCupid to try and find a potential partner, but I had also listed in my bio that I was looking for friends. One day this girl, who we'll call Jen, sent me a message. She seemed really nice and we got to talking and we really hit it off. But I had made it really clear at the time that I wasn't really looking for a relationship due to being preoccupied with school and work. I should also preface the rest of this story by saying that I like to help people and it's really hard for me not to. Honestly, it's been the biggest fall that I've ever had over the years, and it was a contributing factor in multiple abusive relationships, even before this incident. Anyway, the result of this has been that I tend to drain myself to try and help others, and it always attracts unsavory and unstable people. We started going into conversations about our various interests, and we eventually stumbled across gaming as a mutual interest. Jen suggested that we try and play this new game, Ark Survival Evolved. It's a curse rune of a game that wasn't very well optimized for any system. To be completely honest, it was an absolute dumpster fire of a game, but at the time I thought it had a lot of potential. Jen and I spent a lot of time in the multiplayer, building things, trading dinosaurs, and talking and having a good time. During this time, she had opened up to me about a lot of the abuse that she had suffered from her past relationships, as well as from a family that didn't really accept her being gay. Having also been through some really difficult times myself, I felt a lot of empathy for her. I would try and build her up and talk her out of the self-hating talk whenever I had the energy to. This is when all of the trouble started though. I had started to notice that she was being a little too friendly with me and kept being overly sexual and flirty for about a week or two. It started within the game with RP kind of stuff, where you do the kisses and hugs thing, and it was just all too much for me. I mean, she was really nice and all, but totally not my type. I had addressed the situation with her multiple times, saying that it made me really uncomfortable, but every time we had that conversation, Jen would tell me she understood and that she would back off. But you know the drill, it just never got through to her. By this time, we had started having communications on a chat app called Telegram. I wasn't always on my computer, so at the time it seemed like a pretty convenient solution. I've started noticing that a lot of the emojis she was using displayed a very similar lack of respect for my boundaries. Just as before, I had mentioned to Jen that it made me uncomfortable. I knew that she had a lot going on upstairs, but me being me, I've always been a really gentle soul. It's always been really difficult for me to set firm boundaries and to keep them, especially when someone is suffering. One weekend, I was really packed with homework and a double shift at work, so I ended up getting home pretty late. I booted up the computer just to check some emails as I ate my dinner right before zonking out. When Steam loaded up, I noticed that I had hundreds of missed messages and comments, all which were from Jen. I started from the top, and as I read through, things became progressively more and more out of control for me. By the time I was halfway through them, every other message was either calling me names or threatening to hurt herself if I didn't reply. I had seen enough, so I sent her a message saying that her behavior was unacceptable and that I can't be friends with someone who's going to be abusive like this. I then blocked her on Steam and on Telegram. And this is when crap totally hit the fan. About 30 minutes later, my phone starts going off. Mind you, this is about 12:30 a.m. Alaska time, so that would make it about 3 a.m. for her. She had called my cell number with what she had saved from Telegram. She was totally out of control. From the moment I picked up the phone, she was screaming obscenities and slurs at me, mixed with confessions of love and desperate pleas for me to unblock her so that we could just be friends again, and that she would make it up to me and all that other bull crap. I tried to explain to her that what she had done was just so out of line, and that I just didn't have the emotional capacity to go through another abusive friendship like that, but she wasn't having it. That's when I did the only thing I could do. I ended the call and blocked the number. 5 minutes later, I then get a call from an unrecognized private number and pick it up, knowing exactly what I was in for. It was her yet again, calling from her parents' landline. I immediately hung up. 15 seconds goes by and my phone rings yet again. I dismissed the call. My phone rang again about 5 minutes later from the same number. This probably goes on for about a solid 15 minutes before I just turn my phone off and just go to bed. It was a pretty sleepless night, but thankfully the next day I had class in the evening, so I was really lucky to get the opportunity to sleep in. I woke up from an alright sleep and then turned my phone on to find over 100 missed calls and about just as many voicemails. I checked my Telegram to talk to a different friend of mine about all of the chaos that had been going on, to find new messages from 6 new accounts. Most of them were just walls of text filled with the same out-of-control ramblings that she said on the phone. She had totally lost it. It was all over the place in tone and message, switching back and forth between I love you and really hateful slurs. I was horrified. I mean, I had seen my fair share of breakdowns, but never ones that impacted me directly. Then I get a phone call. It was the same unknown private number. Hoping that she had calmed down enough to listen to reason, I decided to pick up and she just started sobbing and screaming unintelligibly at me, starting right back in. Really mad as hell, I screamed into the phone for her to shut up, and for the first time in what was probably about 14 hours, she did. Very clearly, I told her not to call me ever again and that she had just gone way over the line, and that I really wanted nothing to do with her after this. In a really calm monotone that still makes me shudder to this day, she then said, "What do I do to prove my love for you? Do you want me to kill myself? How about my dog? I can kill her for you too." Honestly, I was so shocked that I just told her no, and that if she really loved me, she would just move on and try and get some help. This was the worst possible answer. She immediately started again with all of the screaming, so I just hung up and turned off my phone. She called me back constantly for the rest of the morning until I turned my phone off. The next day after, I decided to have my number changed, hoping that would be the end of it. A few days went by and I'm at work. My boss comes over to me saying that I had a phone call from my mom. I thought nothing of it until I picked up the phone and then heard Jen's voice on the other end of it. She then started talking to me about how she was going to hurt herself if I didn't unblock her, so I hung up the phone without another word. I then told my boss not to ever bother me with phone calls unless it was from a known number listed on my emergency contacts. With my new phone, I set up Telegram again and started going through blocking all of her alt accounts, but that still wasn't the end of it. For about 6 months after this whole thing went down, every few weeks I would get a new Telegram contact on a brand new number begging me to unblock her so that we could be together. I know it's not some big climactic end, but honestly, what could I even do? At the time, all I really knew of her was her first name, screen name, and state. If I reported it to the police, nothing would have even been done anyways. The cops here don't really take kindly to queer people like myself, so I just didn't really want to risk any bullcrap with them. This is by far one of the most jarring things that have ever happened to me while on the internet. Sorry if it's not all flared up, it's just the boring truth. Oh, and to the Jen, the out-of-control lesbian from Ark Survival Evolved. I really do hope you've gotten help, but please, don't ever contact me ever again.